Hi everyone, and welcome to the Pisces Guide to Pop Culture. I'm of course your host, TJ West, coming to you today to talk, as I have so often, about my forthcoming book, Country Red Romance, which is out in just a few days. As a reminder, this is the cover. It is the digital version, which is now available for pre-order on Amazon. Now, that's only for the digital version. If you want to buy the paperback, it's available for pre-order everywhere else, Barnes & Noble, Books A Million. Once again, Stacey Hicks at the Romance Landia Bookshop in Centerville, Maryland is having a lovely pre-order campaign where you can get like a cool lanyard and a book plate and everything. And of course, you can order it from the Buzzword in Ocean City. So really, there's a sort of whole group of options that we have. Speaking of which, the book launch will be at the Buzzword next Tuesday. So if you'd like to show up, that would be awesome. If you're in the area, I would love that. Message me for details or spread the word if you know anyone who lives in Maryland or happens to be visiting OC next week. It is, the beginning of Pride. I think it's a great opportunity to support a queer author. But anyway, I digress. So I wanted to spend today's edition of the Pisces Guide talking again about, composition and how we go about as writers, within genres that are driven by tropes. What are some of the limitations, but also what are some of the sort of exciting things or the ways you can work within tropes to create something original? And this is a very divisive topic within writing, and particularly in this day and age where, there's AI and there's a whole conversation about how original is fiction, what goes into the art of writing a genre like romance that is obviously so beholden and so indebted to tropes. So first of all, I'll talk a little bit about what a trope is, what are some examples, and then we can talk a little bit about how I as a writer approach tropes and how they can be actually quite limiting, yes, but there is so much flexibility within them to work within them, to subvert them, to play with them, and so forth. So tropes are basically narrative patterns that various subtypes of romance engage with. One of the most common, if you've watched any romance comedy or romantic comedy from the 90s, this is the enemies to lovers, where, the characters, for whatever reason, don't like each other. Maybe they meet on the street and they have like a confrontation, and then, they end up falling in love with each other, finding something in common. That's a really, common trope. Opposites attract. I mean, that's kind of self-explanatory. Some of the others that you might be familiar with are like small town, where obviously, maybe a wealthy person or someone of privilege goes from their life in the city, and then they end up going to the small town and finding love there with a handsome lumberjack or artisan or whatever. Forced proximity, obviously, is the case where you have characters that are, for whatever plot reasons, end up having to spend a weekend together, and so they end up falling in love. All these kinds of things that set certain narrative expectations. When a reader knows that these are the tropes the novel is going to be engaging with, they sort of know what to expect. They have a certain set of beliefs about what this genre is what this particular book is going to look like. So, example, in Country Red Romance is obviously very much an enemies to lovers, but also forced proximity, because they do end up spending the weekend at Jared's parents' house because of Charlie's altercation with a homophobe. So, those are sort of working together. The insta-love, again, kind of self-explanatory, where a very limited amount of time that characters fall in love. As a Pisces, that's basically my default setting, and so I love the insta-love trope. And so, when you write with those tropes in mind, you know that you're setting your readers up for certain expectations. And so if you are going to play with them or undermine them or undercut them or any of those kinds of, more postmodern approaches, you have to be aware of what that's going to do and how it might affect what your readers experience of your novel, maybe. Now, I love writing in tropes. I mean, it's part of the reason I love writing in genres like fantasy and romance, which are very heavily trope-driven. But at the same time, I don't find them restricting. Like, there are certain narrative conventions within all of fiction. And I think even sort of more highfalutin genres such as, literary fiction, a very nebulously defined genre to be sure, also relies on tropes. Like, the Bildungsroman, for example, or, the other kinds of things that people write when they write literary fiction are in them where, just as tropey. They just don't get recognized as such. But for me, writing Country Red Romance I didn't feel it restricted. I knew that there were certain patterns and certain beats that were going to have to be met. The meet cute, gradually Jared, who has this kind of resentment at Charlie, slowly thawing until he realizes, oh my God, I'm actually in love with him. And there's always the attraction embedded in the enemies to lovers to start with. So I don't know. I find that tropes are just, they don't make me feel like I'm just pumping things out on an assembly line. I just find them to be sort of guideposts, like that they are sort of signaling to me and the reader, what am I doing? How am I engaging with this? And I find them, I just find them fun. I find them fun to play with. There's so many possibilities. Like, the enemies to lovers is so vast. So, for example, in my second book, which will hopefully be coming out in 2026, is once again an enemies to lovers, but with a twist, because in this case, the characters are a coal mining executive and an environmental activist who are have a meet-cute hookup, but then end up spying on each other, but neither of them realizes the other's spying on them, and neither of them realizes the other knows who they are. So there's a whole thing in play. My third novel is, again, a kind of iteration of that. Enemies to lovers, opposites attract. It's about a pop music star and a country music star who worked together in their youth, but now about a falling out. So in addition, I'm drawing in the second chance romance, which is obviously self-explanatory, that after, you have a second chance to make this work. So, there are so many tropes, and they have so many different permutations that it's almost limitless. You just kind of throw them together, see what works, what doesn't, how they've, sometimes certain narrative events won't work necessarily, but, that's why you always have to be prepared to revise and change what you're doing. So in short, and to sort of sum up and draw to a close here, I don't find tropes to be restricting either as a reader or as a writer. I find them just kind of a cool thing that you can make use of as you're writing. And there are just seriously so many possibilities with tropes within romance, but also within romantasy and within romance. I never get tired of reading it because I still feel that doesn't short circuit my relationship with the reader, or with the writer. Like, I feel like there's an exchange, and we both kind of know that. And I think that that's why, no matter how dominant AI becomes, and no matter how much people use that as sort of this lazy way of writing, I'm going to speak honestly, I will never do that, because for me, a great part of the pleasure of writing is knowing that I'm connecting with readers, and that I'm engaging with them in a way that is meaningful for both of us, even if we already know the destination. It's about the trip and how we go there and how I guide them in that way. So that's my thoughts about tropes and romance and other escapist genres. Once again, just to sort of sum up and, with the call to action, remember, Country Road Romance is for sale in just a few days, but if you want to do a pre-order, that would be awesome. The digital version is available for pre-order from Amazon. The print copy is pretty much everywhere else, but starting on the 1st, the print copy will be from Amazon too. And so, very exciting. And again, there'll be a special book launch at the Buzzword in Ocean City next week. So if you would like to get more details about that or attend, please reach out to me. I would love to see anyone there who might be in the area, who wants to come here and talk about the book, read from the book. And also, they serve wine. So there's that too. Anyway, thanks so much for joining me for another edition of the Pisces Guide to Pop Culture. I'm, of course, your host, TJ West, and I look forward to seeing you all soon. Take care.